My name is Rita Glavin, and I represent Governor Cuomo. I'm a former federal prosecutor, and I know the difference between putting a case together against a target versus doing independent fact-finding with an open mind. And there has been no open-minded fact-finding in this case. The investigation was conducted to support a predetermined narrative. In our legal system, both sides are heard and given access to the evidence. But here, instead of acting as independent fact finders, the investigators acted as prosecutors, judge, and jury. On Tuesday, the Attorney General and the investigators called a press conference. And within minutes of that very carefully choreographed press conference, there were calls for the governor to step down. We weren't given, as Mr. Fishman told you, any advance notice about when the report would be released, its findings, a chance to respond to errors, inaccuracies, and that was intentional. This was not an exercise in truth finding. Let me tell you that on just our review of the report, and again, as Mr. Fishman informed you, we do not have the underlying evidence that has not been provided to us from that report. We have not had a chance to examine the transcripts or even memos of interview of the 179 people that the Attorney General interviewed. But what I do know, based on the limited information we've been given access to, there are contrary facts and omissions from that report. And you have to ask yourselves why. I'm going to give you 3 examples. The first relates to Executive Assistant number 1. What she has alleged is perhaps the most significant allegation made against the governor. She has said that during the work day, the governor groped her breast in his office. In essence, she has accused Governor Cuomo of sexual assault. The governor has repeatedly denied that ever took place. And quite frankly, when she first raised this in early March, he was stunned. This executive assistant gave an anonymous interview to the Albany Times-Union. It was published on April 7 of 2021, and I encourage you, please, read what she told the Times-Union about that day. She told them that she was asked to come to the mansion to fix a technical issue with the governor's iPhone or with his phone. And the report states as fact that she was summoned to the mansion. What she tells the Times-Union is that she walked into the governor's second floor office, where he slammed the door, groped her breast under her shirt and over her bra, and then she left without saying a word because she was so upset. The governor was interviewed on July 17th. And during that interview, he was told for the first time when this alleged incident took place, November 16 of 2020. And after that interview, I did, as the governor's lawyer, what I would have expected that the investigators had already done. I did what any investigator would do, which is I reconstructed the events of that day. Me and my team went through the emails for that day. all the entrance and exit records. And this woman's story, which is stated as fact in the report, is false. The documentary evidence does not support what she said. And what is disturbing to me is that the two investigators did not show that evidence to you. They ignored it. Ask them why. Let's go through the timeline of November 16th, okay? In her account to the Albany Times Union, she says she was summoned there from the Capitol to the mansion to fix a phone issue. She arrived, she went to the governor's office, he came out from behind his desk, that he groped her, and there was the door slamming. And he said, "I don't care," when she said, someone's going to see us. And then she walked out and left. Well, that's not what happened. She was at the mansion that day for several hours. She wasn't just working with the governor, she was working with other staffers. Emails that she sent while she was at the mansion reflect that she was joking while she was there. She was eating snacks. And she even offered to stay longer at the mansion when her work was done. Here is the timeline that the investigators don't talk about. She arrived at the mansion at 11:59. Within 5-6 minutes after she's there, she's forwarded a speech, okay, from Stephanie Benton, who was also in the mansion that day. She was there to work on a speech, not to fix a phone. And over the next hour or two, the governor was on phone calls with other governors, and he was preparing for a 2 o'clock phone call with governors and the Vice President of the United States about COVID. And he had a series of scheduled calls with governors in connection with that. At 1:59 p.m., she sends an email to Miss Kennedy, who was at the Capitol, another assistant, and said, Steph said, never mind, Harold fixed it. At 2:09 p.m., while the governor is participating in a 30-minute governor's call with the vice president, she emails the draft speech that she'd been working on back to Miss Benton. And then that speech was forwarded to senior staff. At 2:16, Miss Kennedy emails her and asks how it was going at the mansion. And her response at 2:18 p.m., pretty good right now, actually. Carol just came through with some cheese and crackers, so I'm happy now. Carol is a member of the mansion staff. And where Carol serves cheese and crackers is not on the second floor of the governor's offices, it's on the first. And when she emails about getting the cheese and the crackers, Miss Kennedy replies back, you gotta love the cheese. At 2:37, Executive Assistant 1 then emails Miss Benton again, and she says, hey, the gov just came in, said he was good. You need me to do anything else for you before I head back to the Cap? What that email reflects, when it says the governor just came in, there is an office on the first floor of the mansion where the governor's assistants work when they are there. That email reflects that the governor came into that office to say he was good. Didn't need anything else. And then she emails Stephanie Benton to say, is there anything else that you need me to do here before I head back? The governor then was on a phone call with his chief of staff, and Executive Assistant 1 left the mansion at 2:47. This does not in any way, shape, or form reflect what Executive One told the Times Union? And again, I ask, why did this report ignore documentary evidence, and why did they not want to tell you? The report instead suggests that the governor falsely testified that there were people around, that he said to touch a woman's breast, who I hardly knew, in the mansion with 10 staff around. And what the report said, there wasn't evidence that there were 10 mansion staff around in the vicinity of his second floor office that day. Well, the report's wrong. Records reflect that senior staff members were in the mansion working with the governor that day while Executive Assistant One was there. Pete Jiminian, Stephanie Benton, Melissa DeRosa, the house staff, as you know, Carol. Carol's usually there with one or two others. There were actually staffers that came in and left to drop something off. Did the investigators ever ask those senior staffers about November 16th? Ask them. Ask the Attorney General. Release the transcripts. Because I'm betting they didn't. It would have taken 5 minutes for the Attorney General's investigators to send a subpoena asking for all emails and records for November 16th, and they didn't do it. You got to ask yourselves why and what this report was designed to do and to not do. When Executive Assistant One claims the governor slammed his door, if you're to ask anybody who works in the mansion, because of the age of the mansion, a door being slammed shut echoes. The report doesn't say that anyone corroborated hearing a door slammed, because the fact that the Executive Assistant One was in the mansion that day, that's not an often thing that happens during the workday, that Executive Assistant One is in the mansion for several hours. Did the investigators even ask any of the people who were there that day? Ask them. I'm going to go to the second example. Statements that undermined Lindsey Boylan's claims were ignored in this report. On December 5th, and this is where this all started, with tweets from Lindsey Boylan. On December 5th, she tweeted, now this is 2 weeks. You have to consider the timing of when these tweets started. She had announced about 2 weeks earlier that she was running to be the Manhattan Borough President. So she knew that her tweets at that time were all going to be within her campaign and the platform that she was going to run on. And what she said was she tried to quit 3 times from the governor's office before it stuck. She said, I'm a privileged person. I could opt out, and eventually did. And what she was clearly trying to tell the world is that she opted out because of a toxic work environment that she was being sexually harassed. Well, the evidence is not that that's why Ms. Boylan left. As has been, reported, what happened is that on September 26th of 2018, the Governor's Council met with Ms. Boylan. And the reason for the meeting is that there had been a number of employee complaints about her. The Attorney General's report omits what those allegations were, what was said about Ms. Boylan, what the recommendation was from the Empire State Development Agency. Why? Why didn't they put that in there? When Ms. Boylan was confronted with a number of complaints, she immediately and voluntarily tendered her resignation. She then sent an email throughout the chamber. She was resigning. We want to know what happened 4 days later? She called the governor's council and said she wanted her job back. The governor's office declined to give her her job back. She then reached out to the governor to personally intervene. She emailed his assistant, asked to speak with him. He didn't return her call after consulting with a number of people. Why didn't the investigators put this in their report? Particularly when 2 weeks after she started her campaign, she was leading the public to believe a false story, that she left because of sexual harassment and a bad work environment, when in fact she left after being confronted with a number of complaints and then really wanted her job back and they wouldn't give it back. The fact that this is not in the report goes to Ms. Boylan's credibility, and it goes to the credibility of the investigators and their investigation and their fact-finding. I want to make a last point, the third point. After Ms. Boylan began tweeting in December of 2020, there were phone conversations between Ms. Boylan's primary campaign consultant, person by the name of Trip Yang, and Letitia James's chief of staff, Ibrahim Khan. Those conversations were about what Ms. Boylan was tweeting about and her intent with respect to the allegation she was going to be making against the governor and what she potentially planned to do. And Trip Yang is having conversations with Ibrahim Khan because they know each other. Letitia James's chief of staff worked with Trip Yang because he was a consultant to her 2018 Attorney General campaign. The investigators were made aware of that those conversations happened. Did the two investigators interview the Attorney General's chief of staff about what Trip Yang had said? That would have been something critical for them to do, and about whether Trip Yang and people within the campaign found what Ms. Boylan was saying to be credible. One of her media campaign consultants, very shortly after she began making these tweets, quit. Did they interview the media consultant about what her conversations were with Lindsey Boylan about these allegations? Ask them. What Ms. Boylan was talking about at the time she first made these allegations could not be more relevant to whether they were credible. The Attorney General's chief of staff should be interviewed, Trip Yang should be interviewed, the media consultant should be interviewed, and emails from the campaign around that time should be subpoenaed. I want to go to my last point about the report, and my last point for now. There was a claim by Ms. Boylan made for the first time on February 24th in a Medium piece that she got onto the state airplane where the governor and other staffers were. And what she said is that she was sitting across from the governor, and this is a pretty small plane, next to a woman named Abby Collins. And what she said was that at one point that the governor said something to the effect of, "Let's play strip poker." Well, Miss Collins, Danny Lever, John Maggiore, and Howard Zemsky, they were on all flights with both Miss Boylan and the governor in October of 2017, and they stated that this conversation did not happen, okay? What does the report say? The report says that after denying having heard this strip poker comment, Howard Zemsky, quote, this is what the report says, received a disparaging message from Miss Boylan that he found, quote, jarring, end quote, and threatening. After getting the jarring and threatening communication from Miss Boylan, Mr. Zemsky's recollection then suddenly changed. Why did the report not share what the message was? What did Miss Boylan threaten Mr. Zemsky with that would have caused him to change his story? Why is that not in there? Why does the report discredit all of the other witnesses who were there and then suddenly credit the one witness who had been threatened by Lindsey Boylan before his recollection changed? Did the investigators ignore that message? Did the investigators look into whether Lindsey Boylan was making efforts to influence the testimony of other witnesses? Because the report mentions that she was reaching out to other people. Why is the message not been shared? The governor has been asked by the Judiciary Committee of the Assembly to get a response of any evidence or arguments that he has by August 13th. And we intend to do that. But what we have asked for and are entitled to is the evidence. We're entitled to get the transcripts, the underlying documents that support that report, because what we know is that they have left material out. And I will share with you that I received a phone call a few months ago from a lawyer. And this was a lawyer that I did not know. I didn't know was involved in the case and represented someone who I didn't even know had been interviewed. But this lawyer got my telephone number through another lawyer because this lawyer believed that it was very important for me to get some information. And the information was that the manner of questioning alarmed this lawyer, that I was being warned that minds were made up and that questions pushed back on evidence that was favorable to the governor, and particularly information this witness had to provide about credibility. The governor deserves to be treated fairly, and he must be. That did not happen here. This was one-sided, and he was ambushed. There's a rule of law in this country. I believe in it. Give us the opportunity to have the evidence, and we're going to give our response. Thank you.